Chapter 18. The Final Battle. The ritual commenced, with Agnes leading the chant. Jake, Sarah, and Matt poured their energy into the circle, their voices merging with Agnes's to create a powerful, harmonious resonance. The light from the stars intensified, bathing the town in a surreal, otherworldly glow. The entity roared in defiance, its form shifting and contorting as it struggled against the binding force. The ground beneath them cracked, and a dark, swirling vortex began to form. The entity's power was immense, but the combined strength of the townspeople and the celestial alignment was greater. In a final, desperate push, Jake stepped forward, channeling all his energy into a single, piercing note. The light around them blazed brighter, the stars above aligning perfectly. The entity let out a final, agonized scream as it was pulled into the vortex, its form disintegrating into nothingness. Chapter 19. The Dawn of a New Era. As the first light of dawn broke over Frostbrook, the air was filled with a profound sense of peace. The darkness had been vanquished, the entity destroyed once and for all. The town, though weary and battered, rejoiced in their hard-won victory. Agnes, her task complete, passed the mantle of protector to Jake, Sarah, and Matt. She knew they would lead the town with wisdom and courage. With a final blessing, she faded into the background, content in the knowledge that her work was done. Frostbrook flourished in the years that followed, the memory of the darkness a distant echo. The story of the brave souls who had faced the entity became legend, a testament to the power of unity and courage. The town prospered, its people living in harmony with the land and each other. Jake, Sarah, and Matt continued to watch over Frostbrook, their vigilance never wavering. They taught the next generation the importance of community, resilience, and preparedness. And though the shadows had been banished, they remained ever watchful, ready to protect their home from any threat that might arise. In the heart of winter, when the snow fell thick and the nights grew long, the townsfolk would gather around the fire, sharing stories of the past and looking forward to the future. They knew that as long as they stood together, no darkness could ever truly conquer the light. And so, in the small town of Frostbrook, nestled in the embrace of the mountains, life went on, filled with hope, love, and the promise of new beginnings. Chapter 20. Unexpected Visitor. Several peaceful winters had passed since the defeat of the entity, and Frostbrook thrived. On a quiet, snowy evening, an unexpected visitor arrived in town. A young woman named Lydia, shivering and weary from travel, stumbled into the local inn. Her arrival was met with curiosity and concern, as she bore an uncanny resemblance to Emily, the brave soul who had sacrificed herself years ago. Lydia claimed to have no knowledge of Emily or the events of the past, but she carried an old locket with the Marlowe family crest. Jake, Sarah, and Matt, now the elders of the town, were struck by the coincidence. They welcomed her warmly, sensing she might be connected to their past in ways she herself did not understand. Chapter 21. Unraveling the Mystery. Intrigued by Lydia's arrival, Jake and Sarah delved into the town's archives, uncovering more about the Marlowe family lineage. they discovered that Elizabeth Marlowe had a sister who had fled the town before the darkness took hold. It seemed possible that Lydia was a descendant of this sister, bringing the Marlowe bloodline full circle back to Frostbrook. As Lydia settled into town, strange dreams began to plague her. Visions of the Marlowe house, the entity, and the ancient rituals. She confided in Jake, Sarah, and Matt, who recognized the significance of her dreams. They realized that despite their victory, remnants of the entity's power might still linger, connected to Lydia through her bloodline. Chapter 22: The Unearthed Artifact. One day, while exploring the remains of the Marlowe house, Lydia uncovered a hidden chamber beneath the rubble. Inside, they found an ancient artifact, a beautifully carved box with intricate symbols that matched those in the ancient text. Agnes had never mentioned this artifact, and its purpose was unclear. Jake, Sarah, and Matt enlisted the help of scholars and occultists from neighboring towns to decipher the box's secrets. Through their research, they learned that the artifact was a powerful protective charm designed to seal away malevolent forces permanently. However, it required the blood of a Marlowe descendant to activate its full potential. Chapter 23: The Sacrifice Revisited. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Lydia felt a deep sense of duty to her ancestors and the town that had become her home. The ritual to activate the artifact would be dangerous, but it was the only way to ensure that the entity, or any remnant of its power, would never threaten Frostbrook again. Jake, Sarah, and Matt prepared the town for the ritual, just as they had done years before. The townspeople, now experienced in facing such threats, rallied around Lydia, offering their support and protection. The bond of community that had saved them once before was stronger than ever. Chapter 24: The Eternal Seal. On the night of the winter solstice, under a clear, star-filled sky, Lydia stood at the center of the town square. The artifact, now glowing with an ethereal light, pulsed in her hands. Jake, Sarah, and Matt formed a protective circle around her, their determination unwavering. Lydia began the incantation, her voice strong and clear. As she spoke, the ground trembled and a dark, swirling mist rose from the earth, remnants of the entity's power seeking to escape. The townspeople held their ground, their collective will forming a barrier against the darkness. As the ritual reached its climax, Lydia made a small cut on her palm, letting a few drops of her blood fall onto the artifact. The symbols on the box flared to life, and a blinding light erupted from within, enveloping the town. The dark mist screamed and writhed before being sucked into the artifact, which sealed shut with a resounding finale. Chapter 25: A New Dawn. The first light of dawn brought a new sense of peace and security to Frostbrook. The artifact, now inert, was buried deep beneath the town, its power dormant, but ready to protect if ever needed again. Lydia, though exhausted, was hailed as a hero, her bravery ensuring the town's safety for generations to come. Jake, Sarah, and Matt, their roles as protectors fulfilled, continued to guide the town with wisdom and care. They knew that the future held its own challenges, but they were confident that the spirit of Frostbrook would endure. Years turned into decades, and Frostbrook grew and prospered. The story of the entity and the heroes who had faced it became a cherished part of the town's history, passed down through the generations. Lydia, who had started a family of her own, ensured that the legacy of courage and unity was never forgotten. On cold winter nights, when the snow fell thick and the wind howled through the trees, the townsfolk would gather around the fire, sharing tales of bravery and resilience. They would look to the sky, confident that as long as they stood together, no darkness could ever dim the light of Frostbrook. And so, in the small town nestled in the mountains, the spirit of the past lived on, a beacon of hope and strength for all who called Frostbrook home. Chapter 26: A Whisper from the Past. Life in Frostbrook continued peacefully, with the town growing and thriving. The protective artifact remained buried, a silent guardian. One winter, as the town prepared for its annual festival, a young boy named Thomas, Lydia's grandson, began to experience strange dreams. Thomas saw visions of the past, of the battles fought against the darkness. He saw Emily, the entity, and the rituals. One night, he dreamed of a figure shrouded in light who spoke to him, warning of a new threat that was not a direct remnant of the entity, but something darker, something that sought to exploit the town's past traumas. Chapter 27: The Forgotten Enemy. Thomas confided in his grandmother Lydia, who listened with growing concern. She recognized the signs and realized that Frostbrook might once again be in danger. Lydia, now elderly but still sharp, called upon Jake, Sarah, and Matt to discuss Thomas's dreams. Together, they delved into the town's history and discovered a hidden chapter, a malevolent force that had once tried to invade the town centuries before the entity. This force had been weakened and driven away by the Marlowe ancestors, but had never been fully defeated. It had waited, biding its time, growing stronger. Chapter 28: Rallying the Town. With the new threat looming, Lydia, Jake, Sarah, and Matt knew they needed to act swiftly. They called a town meeting, explaining the situation and the importance of unity. The townspeople, though shocked, rallied together, trusting their leaders who had protected them before. Preparations began in earnest. The town's defenses were fortified, and everyone, young and old, learned how to protect themselves and each other. Agnes's teachings were revived, and new rituals were studied to combat the ancient threat. Chapter 29: The Rising Darkness. As winter deepened, the signs of the coming threat grew more pronounced. Strange occurrences plagued the town: eerie lights in the forest, animals acting erratically, and an oppressive feeling that settled over Frostbrook. The once festive atmosphere turned tense as the townspeople braced for the impending danger. Thomas's dreams became more vivid and detailed, providing crucial information about the enemy. He saw visions of a dark, ancient figure, cloaked in shadows, commanding a legion of spectral creatures. This figure sought to harness the lingering energy of the defeated entity to reclaim its power. Chapter 30: The Battle Begins. On the coldest night of the year, the ancient enemy struck. Dark figures emerged from the forest, moving swiftly and silently toward the town. The spectral creatures, twisted and terrifying, attacked without mercy. The town's defenses were put to the test, and the battle for Frostbrook's survival began. Jake, Sarah, Matt and Lydia led the charge, their experience and knowledge guiding the townspeople. Thomas, despite his youth, played a crucial role, using his dreams to anticipate the enemy's moves and weaknesses. The town's unity and resilience shone through as they fought back against the dark forces. Chapter 31: Confronting the Darkness. As the battle raged, Lydia and Thomas realized that the only way to defeat the ancient enemy was to confront it directly. They ventured into the forest, guided by Thomas's visions, to find the source of the darkness. Jake, Sarah, and Matt followed, their determination unwavering. Deep in the forest, they discovered an ancient altar, the heart of the enemy's power. The dark figure stood before it, a menacing presence. Lydia began a powerful incantation, passed down through generations, while Thomas faced the figure, his courage bolstered by the spirits of his ancestors. Chapter 32: The Final Confrontation. The air crackled with energy as Lydia's incantation grew stronger. The dark figure, realizing the threat, attacked with a fury, but Thomas stood his ground. Jake, Sarah, and Matt fought off the spectral creatures, protecting Lydia as she completed the ritual. With a final, resounding chant, Lydia unleashed the power of the protective artifact. A blinding light erupted from the altar, engulfing the dark figure and its minions. The forest trembled, and the darkness was torn apart, dissipating into nothingness. Chapter 33: A New Dawn. As the first light of dawn broke, the forest and town were calm once more. The ancient enemy had been vanquished, its power shattered. The townspeople, though exhausted, rejoiced in their victory. Frostbrook had faced yet another trial and emerged stronger. Lydia, proud of her grandson and her town, passed on the mantle of protector to Thomas, ensuring that the knowledge and strength of their lineage would continue. The town celebrated their triumph, knowing that as long as they remained united, they could face any challenge. Years turned into decades, and Thomas grew into a wise and respected leader. He continued the legacy of his ancestors, teaching the next generation the importance of unity, resilience, and vigilance. The story of Frostbrook's battles against darkness became a cherished part of the town's history. On cold winter nights, when the snow fell thick and the wind howled through the trees, the townsfolk would gather around the fire, sharing tales of bravery and hope. They knew that as long as they stood together, no darkness could ever truly conquer the light. And so, in the small town nestled in the mountains, the spirit of the past lived on, a beacon of hope and strength for all who called Frostbrook home. Thomas, the guardian of Frostbrook, watched over his town with pride, knowing that its future was bright and secure. Chapter 34: The Legacy of the Ancients. Winter after winter, Frostbrook enjoyed peace and prosperity, its people thriving under the guidance of Thomas and the wisdom of their elders. However, even in times of peace, vigilance remained paramount. Thomas, now a seasoned leader, often reflected on the lessons of the past and the responsibilities of safeguarding the town. One snowy evening, as he sifted through the town's ancient records, Thomas discovered a hidden compartment in the Marlowe family archives. Inside was a weathered scroll, its delicate parchment covered in cryptic symbols. The scroll detailed a prophecy that spoke of a great convergence of light and darkness, a final trial that would determine the fate of Frostbrook forever. Chapter 35: A New Omen. As the years passed, a new generation grew up in Frostbrook, unaware of the battles their ancestors had fought. The townspeople, while still vigilant, began to focus more on their everyday lives and less on the potential threats. The scroll Thomas had found weighed heavily on his mind, and he knew that preparation was essential. One winter, an unexpected visitor arrived in Frostbrook, a mysterious wanderer named Alara. She claimed to be a seer, guided by visions of an impending great convergence. Her arrival coincided with a series of strange natural phenomena, unseasonable storms, unusual animal behavior, and an eerie aurora borealis that lingered in the night sky. Alara's presence stirred both curiosity and suspicion among the townspeople. She spoke of an ancient power rising and offered her knowledge to help them prepare. Thomas, sensing the truth in her words, welcomed her assistance, even as he kept a watchful eye on her. Chapter 36: Gathering Allies. Thomas and Alara worked tirelessly to decipher the ancient scroll and understand the nature of the impending convergence. They realized that the convergence would bring forth both immense light and darkness, a final trial that would require every ounce of strength and unity the town could muster. To prepare, they reached out to neighboring communities, seeking allies and sharing knowledge. Frostbrook's reputation for resilience and bravery drew many willing to help. Among them were scholars, warriors, and healers, each bringing their unique skills to aid in the coming battle. The town became a bustling hub of activity, with training sessions, strategy meetings, and rituals to fortify their defenses. The sense of urgency was palpable, but so was the spirit of cooperation and determination. Chapter 37: The First Signs. As the winter solstice approached, the first signs of the convergence became evident. The aurora borealis intensified, casting an otherworldly glow over Frostbrook. Strange creatures began to appear at the town's borders, testing their defenses and spreading fear among the people. Alara's visions grew more frequent and intense, guiding Thomas and the town's leaders in their preparations. She spoke of a hidden power within Frostbrook, a light that could counter the darkness if they could find and harness it. This light, she believed, was tied to the town's very essence and the courage of its people. Chapter 38: The Hidden Light. Determined to uncover the source of this hidden power, Thomas led a group of trusted allies on an expedition into the depths of the forest surrounding Frostbrook. Guided by Alara's visions, they ventured into uncharted territory, facing numerous challenges and discovering long-forgotten secrets of the land. In a secluded glade, they found an ancient tree, its roots intertwining with the ruins of an old sanctuary. The tree emanated a soft, warm light, and Alara confirmed that this was the source of the hidden power. The sanctuary, once a place of worship and protection, held the key to harnessing the light needed to combat the convergence. Through careful rituals and ceremonies, Thomas and his allies awakened the tree's power, channeling its energy into a protective talisman. This talisman, infused with the essence of the ancient sanctuary, would serve as their beacon of hope in the battle to come. Chapter 39: The Convergence. On the night of the winter solstice, Frostbrook was ready. The sky above shimmered with the aurora borealis, casting an eerie glow over the town. The air was charged with anticipation and determination. The townspeople, their allies, and their leaders stood united, ready to face whatever came their way. As the convergence began, a rift opened in the sky, and a torrent of dark energy poured forth. From the rift emerged shadowy figures and spectral creatures, more fearsome than any they had faced before. But with them also came a brilliant light, illuminating the battlefield and giving the defenders a fighting chance. Thomas, bearing the protective talisman, led the charge. Alara, her visions guiding her, supported him with powerful incantations. The townspeople fought valiantly, their unity and courage shining through the darkness. The light from the talisman seemed to resonate with their collective will, creating a barrier that repelled the dark forces. Chapter 40: The Final Battle. The battle raged through the night, each side pushing and pulling in a desperate struggle for dominance. The dark energy sought to overwhelm the town, but the light of Frostbrook, amplified by the talisman, held firm. The ancient power of the tree and the sanctuary infused the defenders with strength and resilience. In the midst of the chaos, Thomas faced the leader of the dark forces, a formidable being cloaked in shadow. Their duel was intense, each blow a clash of light and darkness. With Alara's guidance and the support of his allies, Thomas tapped into the full power of the talisman, channeling the ancient light to strike a decisive blow. As the dark leader fell, the rift in the sky began to close, the dark energy dissipating into the ether. The creatures of darkness retreated, their power broken by the combined might of Frostbrook's defenders. Chapter 1: The Icy Silence. The wind howled through the trees, their skeletal branches rattling like the bones of the long dead. Father Matthew Parsons stood at the edge of the frozen lake, his breath visible in the frigid air. The townsfolk had warned him about the lake, about the stories that surrounded it, but he had dismissed them as mere superstition. The town of Frosthaven was small and isolated, nestled deep within the snowy mountains. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, where secrets were whispered behind closed doors. But there was one secret that the townsfolk never spoke of openly: the lake. Father Parson had been sent to Frosthaven to tend to the spiritual needs of its people, but he found himself increasingly drawn to the lake and its mysteries. There was something about its still, icy surface that called to him, a silent beckoning that he could not ignore. As he stared out over the frozen expanse, he thought he saw something move beneath the ice. He shook his head, dismissing it as a trick of the light. But as he turned to leave, he heard a faint, echoing cry, like a voice calling from the depths. He paused, listening intently. The sound came again, clearer this time. It was a child's voice, filled with terror and desperation. Father Parsons' heart pounded in his chest as he rushed towards the sound, his feet slipping on the ice. "Help me," the voice cried, more distinct now. "Please help me." Father Parson dropped to his knees, peering into the ice. He could see a faint shape, a small figure trapped beneath the surface. Without thinking, he began to dig at the ice with his bare hands, his fingers quickly growing numb from the cold. As he dug, the figure became clearer, a little girl, her eyes wide with fear. She pressed her tiny hands against the ice, her mouth forming words he couldn't hear. Father Parson's hands bled from the effort, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Just as he was about to reach her, the ice began to crack. A spiderweb of fractures spread out from where he had been digging, and with a sudden, violent lurch, the ice gave way. Father Parson plunged into the freezing water, the cold like 1,000 needles piercing his skin. He thrashed, struggling to find the girl, but she was gone. The water closed over his head, and the world went black. Chapter 2: The Haunting of Frosthaven. Father Parson awoke in his small, drafty cabin, shivering uncontrollably. He was wrapped in blankets, a fire blazing in the hearth. Old Mrs. Whitlock, the town's midwife and healer, sat beside him, her wrinkled face creased with concern. "You gave us quite a scare, Father," she said, her voice gentle. "What were you thinking, going out on the lake like that?" Father Parson tried to speak, but his throat was raw, and his voice came out as a croak. "The girl," he managed to whisper. "There was a girl under the ice." Mrs. Whitlock's eyes darkened, and she glanced away. "There are no children missing from the village, Father," she said softly. "You must have been seeing things." Father Parson shook his head, but the effort exhausted him. He closed his eyes, slipping back into a restless sleep. Over the following days, he could not shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong in Frosthaven. The townsfolk were kind and welcoming, but there was an undercurrent of fear that permeated the air. Whispers of strange occurrences, of sightings in the snow, reached his ears, but when he asked for details, the people would clam up, their eyes darting nervously. One night, as he lay in bed, Father Parson heard a soft tapping at his window. He rose, heart pounding, and peered out into the darkness. A figure stood just beyond the circle of light cast by his lamp, a child, dressed in a thin nightgown, her hair matted and her eyes wide with terror. It was the girl from the lake. "Please," she whispered, her voice carrying on the wind. "Help me." Father Parson threw open the door and rushed outside, but the girl was already running, her bare feet leaving no trace in the snow. He followed her, his breath coming in ragged gasps, but she seemed to stay just out of reach, always just beyond his grasp. She led him to the old church at the edge of the village, its windows dark and its doors hanging askew. The townsfolk had abandoned it years ago, claiming it was haunted. Father Parson had dismissed their fears as superstition, but now, standing before its looming facade, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. The girl stood at the entrance, her eyes pleading. "Help me," she repeated, and then she was gone, vanishing into the darkness of the church. Father Parson hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The air was musty and thick with the scent of decay. Shadows loomed, flickering in the dim light of his lantern. As he moved deeper into the church, he heard the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the empty halls. "Who's there?" he called, his voice trembling. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into his soul. It was a man, dressed in tattered robes, his face twisted in a rictus of pain. "You should not have come here," the man said, his voice a dry rasp. "This place is cursed." Father Parson felt a surge of anger. "Who are you? What have you done to the girl?" The man laughed, a sound devoid of mirth. "The girl is beyond your help, Father. Just as I am. Just as this entire village is. The lake claims all who come near it. It is a gateway, a doorway to something far more ancient and terrible than you can imagine." Father Parson backed away, his mind reeling. "What are you talking about?" "The lake feeds on our fear, our despair," the man continued. "It draws us in, consumes us. You must leave this place, Father, before it takes you too." But Father Parson couldn't leave. He couldn't abandon the girl. Gathering his courage, he pushed past the man and made his way to the altar. There, lying on the cold stone, was a book, its pages yellowed with age. He opened it, his hands shaking, and began to read. The words were a jumble of archaic language and strange symbols, but as he read, he began to understand. The lake was indeed a gateway, a portal to another realm, a place of darkness and horror. And the girl was its latest victim, trapped between worlds, her soul crying out for release. Father Parson knew what he had to do. He had to perform the ritual described in the book, to close the gateway and free the girl. He gathered the necessary items, candles, herbs, and a dagger, and prepared himself. As he began the ritual, the shadows in the church seemed to close in around him, and he felt a malevolent presence watching him. But he pressed on, chanting the ancient words, his voice growing stronger with each verse. The air grew cold, and the ground beneath him began to tremble. The presence grew closer, its breath hot on the back of his neck. But Father Parson didn't falter. He completed the ritual, the final words echoing through the church. There was a blinding flash of light, and then silence. The presence was gone, and the girl stood before him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, before fading away, her soul finally at peace. Chapter 3: The Legacy of Frosthaven. Father Parson never spoke of what happened that night, but the townsfolk noticed a change in him. He seemed quieter, more contemplative, as if he had glimpsed something beyond the veil of reality. The church remained abandoned, a reminder of the darkness that had once lurked there. But the lake, once feared and avoided, became a place of reflection and remembrance. The people of Frosthaven knew that there were forces in the world beyond their understanding, but they also knew that there was always hope, even in the darkest of times. As for Father Parson, he continued to serve the people of Frosthaven, his faith strengthened by the trials he had faced. He knew that the world was full of mysteries, some terrifying and others wondrous, and he was determined to face them all with courage and compassion. And so, the story of the lake and the girl became a legend, a winter horror story told by the fireside on cold, snowy nights. It was a tale of fear and redemption, of darkness and light, a reminder that even in the frozen abyss, there is always a glimmer of hope. Chapter 4: shadows of the past. As winter deepened, Frosthaven settled into its usual routine, the memory of the haunted church slowly fading into the background. But for Father Parson, the shadows of that night never truly left. He found himself drawn to the lake, its icy surface a constant reminder of the horrors that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. One evening, as he sat by the fire, a knock echoed through his cabin. He opened the door to find a young woman, her face pale and her eyes filled with desperation. "Father, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You must come with me. My brother, he's seen something. Something terrible." Father Parson grabbed his coat and followed the woman through the snow, his heart heavy with dread. They reached a small cottage at the edge of the village, its windows dark and its door ajar. Inside, the woman's brother lay on a makeshift bed, his eyes wide and unseeing. He mumbled incoherently, his hands clutching at the air. "He keeps talking about the lake," the woman explained, tears streaming down her face. "About voices calling to him and shadows in the water. I'm scared, Father. I don't know what to do." Father Parson knelt beside the young man, placing a hand on his forehead. The skin was clammy and cold, and the boy's pulse was weak. "Tell me what you saw," Father Parson said gently. The boy's eyes focused for a moment, and he began to speak in a hoarse whisper. "The lake, it calls to me. I saw her, Father. The girl. She's not alone. There are others, so many others." Father Parson's heart sank. He had hoped that the ritual had put an end to the lake's horrors, but it seemed that the darkness had not been fully banished. "Rest now," he said, his voice soothing. "I will find a way to help you." As he left the cottage, Father Parson's mind raced. He needed more information, something that could help him understand the true nature of the lake's curse. He decided to visit Mrs. Whitlock, hoping that the old healer might have some answers. Chapter 5: Whispers of the Ancients. Mrs. Whitlock's cottage was a cozy haven, filled with the scent of herbs and the warmth of a crackling fire. She greeted Father Parson with a knowing look, as if she had been expecting him. "You've seen the darkness, haven't you?" she said, her voice soft but firm. Father Parson nodded. "The lake, it's not just a gateway. It's a prison. There are souls trapped there, and they can't find peace." Mrs. Whitlock sighed, her eyes distant. "The lake has always been a place of power, even before the village was founded. The ancient ones knew this and sought to contain its darkness. They performed rituals, made sacrifices, all to keep the shadows at bay. But over time, the knowledge was lost and the lake's power grew unchecked." Father Parson felt a chill run down his spine. Is there a way to stop it? To free the souls trapped there? Mrs. Whitlock nodded slowly. There is an old ritual, one that requires great strength and courage. It must be performed at the heart of the lake, where the darkness is strongest. But be warned, Father, the shadows will not give up their hold easily. Father Parson thanked Mrs. Whitlock and left her cottage, determined to face the lake once more. He knew the risk, but he couldn't stand by while innocent souls suffered. Chapter 6: The Descent into Darkness. The night was bitterly cold as Father Parson made his way to the lake. He carried with him the items needed for the ritual, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and resolve. As he reached the edge of the frozen expanse, he saw them, shadows moving beneath the ice, their forms indistinct but unmistakably human. The whispers grew louder, filling his mind with a cacophony of voices, each one pleading for release. He stepped onto the ice, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. The surface crackled under his weight, but he pressed on, each step bringing him closer to the center of the lake. There, he knelt and began the ritual, chanting the ancient words that Mrs. Whitlock had taught him. The shadows swirled around him, their whispers growing more frantic, more desperate. The ice beneath him began to crack, and the ground shook with a terrible force. The air grew colder, and the darkness seemed to close in around him. But Father Parson didn't falter. He continued the chant, his voice steady and strong. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, the girl from the lake. She stood before him, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "Thank you for freeing us." With those words, the darkness shattered, and the ice beneath Father Parson gave way. He plunged into the freezing water, the cold searing his skin. But as he sank into the depths, he felt a sense of peace, knowing that he had done what was right. When Father Parson awoke, he was lying on the shore of the lake, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. He was soaked to the bone and shivering uncontrollably, but he was alive. He sat up slowly, his body aching, and looked out over the lake. The ice was gone, replaced by clear, still water that reflected the sky above. The shadows were gone, and the air was filled with a sense of calm. As he made his way back to the village, he saw the townsfolk gathering, their faces filled with a mix of awe and relief. They had seen the darkness lift, felt the change in the air. Father Parson smiled, knowing that the lake's curse had been lifted. The souls trapped there were finally at peace, and the village of Frosthaven could begin to heal. And so, the legend of the lake became a story of hope and redemption, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a light that can guide us through the shadows. Father Parson continued to serve the people of Frosthaven, his faith unshaken and his resolve stronger than ever. He knew that the world was full of mysteries, but he also knew that with courage and compassion, even the greatest darkness could be overcome. The winter horror stories of Frosthaven became tales of bravery and triumph, told by the fireside to ward off the cold and remind the villagers that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would always come. Chapter 7. Echoes of the Past. Months passed since the harrowing night at the lake, and spring began to thaw the frozen landscape of Frosthaven. The villagers returned to their routines, their spirits lifted by the newfound peace. Father Parson, too, felt a sense of accomplishment, though he couldn't shake the lingering feeling that something remained unfinished. One evening, as he was closing the church after a late service, a stranger arrived in Frosthaven. Dressed in a long, dark coat, The man had a scholarly air about him, with piercing eyes that seemed to take in every detail. "Father Parson?" the man asked, extending a hand. "My name is Dr. Elias Granger. I've come to study the legends surrounding your village and the lake. I understand you've had some experiences recently." Father Parson hesitated, but then shook the man's hand. "Yes, Dr. Granger. There's much to discuss. Please come inside." They settled in the church's modest rectory, a pot of tea warming them against the evening chill. Dr. Granger pulled out a leather-bound notebook, its pages filled with meticulous notes and sketches. "I've been researching phenomena like the one you described," Dr. Granger began. "Ancient curses, supernatural occurrences. Your lake is not unique in its malevolence. There are other places, other stories, that share common threads." Father Parson listened intently as Dr. Granger spoke of other haunted locations and the rituals used to contain their dark forces. The scholar's knowledge was vast, and his theories both intriguing and disturbing. "But there's one thing that concerns me," Dr. Granger said, leaning forward. "You performed the ritual and freed the trapped souls, but such dark places often leave an imprint, an echo of the past. Have you noticed anything unusual since that night?" Father Parson thought for a moment. "I've felt a presence, a lingering sense that something is watching. And the villagers have reported strange dreams, whispers in the night. I thought it was just our imaginations." Dr. Granger nodded. "The darkness may have been banished, but it often leaves a residue, a shadow that clings to the place. We must ensure that it doesn't regain strength." Chapter 8: The Final Purge. Determined to protect Frosthaven from any lingering threat, Father Parson and Dr. Granger set out to perform a final cleansing ritual. They gathered the necessary items: candles, sacred herbs, and ancient talismans inscribed with protective symbols. The villagers watched with a mix of curiosity and trepidation as the two men made their way to the lake. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the water, which now appeared calm and serene. Dr. Granger set up the ritual space at the water's edge, drawing a large circle in the dirt and placing candles at regular intervals. He handed Father Parson a piece of parchment covered in intricate writing. "This is the final incantation," Dr. Granger explained. "It will bind any remaining darkness and ensure it cannot return. We must be precise and unwavering." As they began the ritual, the wind picked up, swirling around them and causing the candles to flicker. The air grew heavy, charged with a palpable energy. Father Parson could feel the presence growing stronger, a cold, oppressive force pressing down on him. They chanted in unison, their voices rising above the howling wind. The shadows around them seemed to writhe and twist, as if trying to break free from the binding circle. Suddenly, a dark figure emerged from the lake, its form indistinct and shrouded in mist. It moved with an unnatural grace, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. "Leave this place," Father Parson shouted, his voice strong and commanding. "You have no power here." The figure halted, its glowing eyes narrowing. For a moment, it seemed to hesitate, then it let out a guttural scream that echoed across the lake. The candles flared, their flames burning bright and steady. Dr. Granger continued the chant, his voice unwavering. The figure writhed in agony, its form disintegrating as the power of the ritual took hold. With one final, ear-piercing shriek, it vanished, leaving nothing but a thin mist hanging over the water. The wind died down, and the oppressive force lifted. The air felt lighter, cleaner, as if a great burden had been lifted from the land. Chapter 9: New Beginnings. With the final purge completed, Frosthaven entered a period of renewal. The villagers embraced the change, their fears replaced with hope. The lake, once a place of dread, became a symbol of resilience and rebirth. Father Parson and Dr. Granger were hailed as heroes, though they remained humble, knowing that their actions had been guided by a higher purpose. Dr. Granger stayed in Frosthaven for several months, documenting the events and helping the villagers understand the significance of their experiences. As spring turned to summer, the village flourished. The crops grew bountiful, and the townsfolk celebrated with festivals and gatherings, their spirits high. The old church, once abandoned and feared, was restored and became a center of community life. Father Parson continued his duties, his faith stronger than ever. He knew that the battle against darkness was never truly over, but he also knew that with courage and unity, even the greatest challenges could be overcome. One day, as he walked by the lake, he saw a group of children playing by the water's edge. Their laughter was pure and joyful, a stark contrast to the terror that had once plagued the village. He smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. Dr. Granger approached, a satisfied look on his face. "You've done well, Father. The village is thriving, and the darkness has been banished." Father Parson nodded. "Thank you, Dr. Granger. I couldn't have done it without your help." Dr. Granger shook his head. "You had the strength and the faith to face the darkness. I merely provided the knowledge. The true power lies within you and your people." As they stood by the lake, watching the sun set over the water, they knew that Frosthaven's story was one of hope and redemption, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. And so, the winter horror stories of Frosthaven became tales of bravery and triumph, told by the fireside to ward off the cold and remind the villagers that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would always come. Father Parson continued to serve the people of Frosthaven, his faith unshaken and his resolve stronger than ever. He knew that the world was full of mysteries, but he also knew that with courage and compassion, even the greatest darkness could be overcome. The winter horror stories of Frosthaven became tales of bravery and triumph, told by the fireside to ward off the cold and remind the villagers that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would always come. Years passed, and Father Parson grew older, his hair turning silver and his steps slower. Yet his spirit remained strong, and his dedication to Frosthaven never wavered. The village thrived, its people resilient and united. One crisp winter's night, as snow gently fell, Father Parson sat by the fire, reflecting on the many years he had served the village. He thought of the challenges they had faced and the darkness they had overcome together. His heart was filled with gratitude and peace. As the fire crackled and the shadows danced on the walls, a familiar presence made itself known. Father Parson looked up to see the spectral figure of the young girl from the lake standing before him, her eyes kind and her expression serene. "Thank you, Father," she whispered, her voice like a gentle breeze. "You saved us all." Father Parson smiled, his eyes moist with emotion. "It was not just me. It was all of us, united in faith and courage." The girl nodded, her form shimmering in the firelight. "The darkness is gone, but the light you brought will remain forever. Rest now, Father. You have earned it." With those words, the girl faded away, leaving Father Parson with a sense of profound peace. He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the fire and the love of his community surrounding him. As he drifted off to sleep, he knew that Frosthaven was safe, its future bright. The stories of their triumph over darkness would be passed down through generations, a testament to the enduring power of hope and unity. And so, Father Parson's legacy lived on, a beacon of light in the cold, dark winters of Frosthaven, forever guiding the village through the shadows and into the dawn. Chapter 10: A New Guardian. Father Parson's passing marked the end of an era in Frosthaven, but his legacy of bravery and hope left a lasting imprint on the village. His funeral was a solemn yet uplifting event, with villagers from all walks of life gathering to honor the man who had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. As the seasons turned and another winter settled in, the villagers found themselves once more gathered by the fireside, sharing tales of Father Parson's courage and the eerie mysteries of the lake. Among them was a young man named Daniel, who had grown up listening to these stories and feeling a profound connection to the legacy of the late priest. Daniel had always been curious about the supernatural and had spent much of his youth exploring the woods and the edges of the lake, hoping to catch a glimpse of the strange phenomena that had once plagued Frosthaven. Inspired by Father Parson's bravery, he had recently decided to pursue a path in the clergy, hoping to serve his community as the old priest had. One evening, as the villagers recounted the tales of the haunted lake, Daniel felt a stirring in his heart. He knew it was his calling to continue Father Parson's work and protect Frosthaven from any future threats. Chapter 15: The Scholar's Secret. Daniel's unease grew as Victor's questions became more persistent. One night, he confided in Dr. Granger about his concerns. "There's something off about Victor," Daniel said, pacing the room. "He's too focused on the darkness, almost as if he's searching for a way to bring it back." Dr. Granger nodded thoughtfully. "I've noticed his intensity as well. We should keep a close eye on him, but also be careful not to jump to conclusions." As they continued to observe Victor, they discovered that he often ventured out late at night, visiting the lake and conducting strange experiments. Daniel decided it was time to confront him. Under the cover of darkness, Daniel and Dr. Granger followed Victor to the lake. They watched as he lit candles and began chanting in a language neither of them recognized. The air grew cold, and a sense of foreboding enveloped them. "Victor, stop!" Daniel shouted, stepping into the clearing. "What are you doing?" Victor turned, his face illuminated by the candlelight, revealing a look of intense focus. "I'm trying to understand the true nature of the darkness," he said. to harness its power, to control it. Daniel's heart raced. You don't know what you're dealing with. The darkness is not something to be controlled. It nearly destroyed this village. Victor's expression softened slightly. I understand your fear, but I believe knowledge is the key to preventing future threats. The darkness may never be truly gone, but if we can understand it, we can protect ourselves. Dr. Granger stepped forward. Victor, your intentions may be noble, but this path is dangerous. The power you're seeking could consume you and endanger us all. Victor hesitated, his resolve wavering. I only want to help, he said quietly. Chapter 16. A Test of Faith. The confrontation with Victor left the village on edge. Daniel and Dr. Granger worked to reassure the villagers, emphasizing the importance of unity and vigilance. They continued to monitor Victor, hoping to guide him away from his dangerous pursuits. One stormy night, as lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, a sense of dread settled over Frosthaven. Daniel felt it in his bones, a warning that something was amiss. He hurried to the church, where he found Victor standing before the altar, a look of determination on his face. I need to know, Victor said, his voice trembling with emotion. I need to understand the darkness, to see if it can truly be controlled. Daniel approached him slowly. Victor, I understand your desire for knowledge, but some things are better left alone. The darkness is a force of chaos and destruction. It cannot be tamed. Victor shook his head. I can't accept that. There must be a way. As the storm raged outside, Daniel knew he had to act. He reached out and placed a hand on Victor's shoulder. Let's find another way together. There is always hope, even in the face of darkness. But we must not let our fear drive us to reckless actions. Victor looked into Daniel's eyes, searching for assurance. Finally, he nodded. You're right. I was blinded by my obsession. I see that now. Together, they extinguished the candles and dismantled Victor's experiment. The oppressive feeling lifted, replaced by a sense of relief and renewed purpose. The storm passed, and Frosthaven awoke to a clear, crisp morning. The village was once again at peace, its people united in their commitment to protect their home. Victor, humbled by his experience, chose to stay in Frosthaven, dedicating himself to studying the mysteries of the lake with a newfound respect for its power. Daniel continued to lead with compassion and wisdom, his faith in the strength of the community unshaken. He knew that darkness could always return, but he also knew that with unity and vigilance, they could face any challenge. The story of Frosthaven and its lake grew richer with each passing year, a tale of courage, redemption, and the enduring power of hope. It was a story told by the fireside, not just as a warning of the past, but as a reminder of the light that could always triumph over darkness. And so, the village thrived, ever watchful, ever hopeful, and forever united against the shadows. Chapter 17. The Keeper of Secrets. Years blended into decades, and Frosthaven prospered under the vigilant watch of its inhabitants. Daniel had become an elder statesman, a figure of wisdom and compassion, whose stories of the lake's darkness and the village's triumph were passed down through generations. Victor Hale, once an outsider, had integrated fully into the community, his scholarly pursuits now focused on preserving the history and ensuring the safety of Frosthaven. The village, however, had not forgotten the darkness. Every year, on the anniversary of the final ritual, the villagers held a vigil at the lake, a solemn reminder of the battles fought and the peace hard won. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast a golden glow over the village, a group of children gathered around Daniel's hearth, eager for one of his legendary stories. His voice, though weathered with age, held a timeless warmth that captivated their young minds. "Tonight," he began, "I will tell you of the Keeper of Secrets, the guardian who watches over our beloved Frosthaven." The children leaned in closer, their eyes wide with anticipation. Chapter 18: The Guardian's Challenge. Long ago, before the darkness first touched Frosthaven, there was a guardian chosen to protect the village and its secrets. This guardian, known as the Keeper of Secrets, was entrusted with knowledge passed down through generations, knowledge that held the key to the village's safety and prosperity. The first keeper was a wise woman named Alara, who possessed a deep understanding of the natural world and the ancient rituals that kept the darkness at bay. She had a gift for seeing into the hearts of men, and her counsel was sought by all who lived in Frosthaven. One harsh winter, a stranger arrived at Alara's door. He was a tall man with dark, piercing eyes that seemed to hold secrets of their own. He introduced himself as Malachi, a wanderer seeking refuge from the storm. Alara, sensing a deep sorrow within him, welcomed him into her home. As the days passed, Malachi revealed his true purpose. He was a seeker of knowledge, driven by a thirst for power that had led him to the darkest corners of the world. He had heard tales of the Keeper of Secrets and the ancient wisdom she possessed. "I have traveled far," Malachi said one night, his voice low and urgent. "I seek the knowledge to control the darkness, to harness its power. Will you help me, Alara?" Alara regarded him with a steady gaze. "The knowledge you seek is not meant for control, but for protection. The darkness is a force of chaos and destruction, not a tool to be wielded." Malachi's eyes flashed with anger. "You speak of fear, not understanding. There must be a way to master it." Alara shook her head. "True power lies not in domination, but in harmony. The darkness must be respected and kept at bay, not controlled." But Malachi was not convinced. One night, driven by his obsession, he stole into Alara's sanctuary and took the sacred texts that held the village's secrets. He fled into the night, intent on unlocking the power of the darkness for his own purposes. Alara, heartbroken by his betrayal, knew that she had to act quickly. She gathered the villagers and led them in a powerful ritual to protect Frosthaven and reclaim the stolen knowledge. The air crackled with energy as they chanted, their voices rising in unison. Malachi, realizing the depth of his mistake, tried to harness the darkness, but it was beyond his control. The forces he had unleashed turned against him, and he was consumed by the very power he sought to dominate. Alara, using her wisdom and the strength of the village, sealed the darkness once more, ensuring that it could never threaten Frosthaven again. She became a legend, the first of many keepers who would watch over the village and its secrets. Chapter 19: The torch passed. As Daniel finished the story, the children sat in awed silence. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. One of the children, a girl with bright, curious eyes, spoke up. "Who is the keeper of secrets now, Grandfather Daniel?" she asked. Daniel smiled warmly. "The keeper of secrets is not one person, but all of us. Each generation must learn and remember, must guard the knowledge and the rituals that protect our village. We are all keepers of the legacy, united in our vigilance." The girl nodded, a look of determination on her young face. "I want to be a keeper of secrets too. I want to protect Frosthaven." Daniel's heart swelled with pride. "And you will, my dear. You will." As the years rolled on, Frosthaven remained a beacon of hope and resilience, its people ever watchful and ever united. The story of the lake and the darkness became a cherished part of their heritage, a testament to the power of community and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Daniel passed away peacefully in his sleep one winter's night, leaving behind a legacy of wisdom and courage. The village mourned his loss but celebrated his life, knowing that his spirit would always be with them. Victor Hale continued his work, ensuring that the knowledge of the past was preserved and that the village remained vigilant against any future threats. He too became a beloved figure in Frosthaven, his dedication and insight a valuable asset to the community. The girl who had vowed to be a keeper of secrets grew up, her name remembered by all. Lila, the guardian of Frosthaven. She carried forward the torch of wisdom and vigilance, ensuring that the village remained safe and its legacy intact. And so, the story of Frosthaven and its lake lived on, a tale of bravery, unity, and the eternal light that could always banish the darkest of shadows. Chapter 20: A New Threat. Years turned into decades, and Frosthaven continued to flourish under the watchful eyes of its guardians. Lila had grown into a wise and respected leader, her commitment to protecting the village unwavering. She had learned from the stories of Father Parson, Daniel, and Victor Hale, and she was determined to uphold their legacy. However, the peace of Frosthaven was not meant to last forever. One fateful winter, a series of strange events began to unfold. The first sign was a sudden drop in temperature, colder than any winter the villagers had ever experienced. The lake, which had remained calm and clear for so long, began to freeze over with an eerie, unnatural speed. One evening, as Lila was preparing for bed, a frantic knock came at her door. It was Thomas, now a young man, his face pale with fear. "Lila, you must come quickly," he urged. "There's something wrong at the lake. Shadows, they're back." Lila felt a chill run down her spine. She grabbed her coat and followed Thomas to the lake, where a group of villagers had already gathered. The ice on the lake's surface was dark and opaque, shadows moving beneath it like restless spirits. Victor Hale, now elderly but still sharp-minded, joined them, his face etched with concern. "It's happening again," he murmured. "The darkness is returning." Chapter 21. The Investigation. Determined to uncover the source of the new threat, Lila and Victor began to investigate. They revisited the ancient texts and notes left by their predecessors, hoping to find clues that might explain the resurgence of the shadows. One night, while poring over Daniel's old journals, Lila found a passage that caught her eye. It described a forgotten ritual, one that was said to bind the darkness permanently, but required a sacrifice of great significance. The binding sacrifice, Lila read aloud. It's said to seal the darkness forever, but it demands a life, the life of the one who performs it. Victor looked grim. That would explain why it was never used. Such a cost, it's unthinkable. Lila nodded, her heart heavy. But if it's the only way to protect Frosthaven, we have to consider it. Victor placed a hand on her shoulder. We must be sure it's the only way. Let's explore every option first. Chapter 22. An Unlikely Ally. As they continued their search for answers, a stranger arrived in Frosthaven. He was a young man, rugged and weather-worn, with a deep, intense gaze. He introduced himself as Elias, a wanderer with knowledge of ancient rituals and dark forces. "I've heard of your village and the battles you fought," Elias said. "I believe I can help you. I've studied the darkness and the rituals used to combat it." Lila was wary but intrigued. "What brings you here now, Elias? Why offer your help?" Elias's eyes softened. "I've seen the destruction darkness can bring. I lost my home to it. When I heard of Frosthaven's resilience, I knew I had to come. Together, we might find a way to stop this." Victor nodded slowly. "Any help is welcome. We need all the knowledge we can gather." Elias joined their efforts, bringing fresh insights and new perspectives. He spoke of ancient guardians and forgotten spells, of rituals that could strengthen the barriers against darkness without the ultimate sacrifice. Chapter 23. The Final Confrontation. As the shadows grew more restless, Lila, Victor, and Elias worked tirelessly to prepare for the final confrontation. They gathered the villagers, explaining the gravity of the situation and the steps they needed to take. "We will perform a series of rituals," Lila announced. "With Elias's help, we believe we can strengthen the seal on the lake and prevent the darkness from breaking free. But we need everyone to participate. Unity is our greatest strength." The villagers, though fearful, were resolute. They had faced darkness before and had always triumphed through their unity and courage. They gathered at the lake, forming a circle around its darkened surface, their voices rising in a powerful chant. Elias guided them through the rituals, his knowledge proving invaluable. As they chanted, the air crackled with energy, and the shadows beneath the ice seemed to recoil. The villagers held their ground, their faith and determination unwavering. Suddenly, the ice cracked, and a dark figure emerged from the depths. It was a manifestation of the darkness, a swirling mass of shadows and malice. Lila stepped forward, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. "You will not take our village," she declared. "We stand united against you." The dark figure roared, its voice a cacophony of despair and anger. But the villagers' chant grew louder, their unity and light overpowering the darkness. Elias joined Lila, their combined strength focusing the energy of the ritual. With a final, resounding chant, the darkness was pushed back, the figure dissolving into the night. The ice on the lake shimmered with a bright, purifying light, and the oppressive presence lifted. The morning after the final confrontation, the village of Frosthaven awoke to a new dawn. The lake, once a source of fear, now glistened peacefully under the sunlight. The shadows had been banished, their threat neutralized by the unity and courage of the villagers. Lila stood at the edge of the lake, Victor and Elias by her side. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. "Thank you, Elias," Lila said, her voice filled with gratitude. "Your knowledge saved us." Elias smiled. "It was your courage and unity that made the difference." Frosthaven is a testament to the strength of community. Victor nodded. "We've learned that no matter how great the darkness, the light of our unity can always overcome it." The villagers held a celebration, honoring their heroes and reaffirming their commitment to protect their home. Lila, now more than ever, was seen as a true guardian of Frosthaven, her leadership guiding them through the darkest of times. As the years passed, the story of Frosthaven's triumph over the darkness was passed down through generations, a tale of bravery, unity, and the enduring power of hope. The village continued to thrive, ever watchful, ever hopeful, and forever united against the shadows. And so, the legacy of Frosthaven lived on, a beacon of light in a world where darkness could never truly conquer the human spirit. Chapter 24: Legacy of Light. With the darkness vanquished and the village thriving, Frosthaven entered a period of unprecedented prosperity. The villagers, their spirits high, worked together to ensure that the lessons of the past were never forgotten. They established a council of elders, with Lila at its head, dedicated to preserving the knowledge and rituals that had protected their home for generations. Elias, having found a new home in Frosthaven, continued to share his extensive knowledge of ancient rituals and dark forces. He became a mentor to the younger generation, teaching them not only about the dangers of the darkness, but also about the importance of unity, courage, and compassion. One day, as the first snow of the season began to fall, Lila gathered the children of the village for a special lesson. They sat in a circle around her, their eyes wide with anticipation. "Today," Lila began, "I want to tell you about the guardians of Frosthaven. We are all guardians, tasked with protecting our village and ensuring that the light of hope and unity never fades." She told them stories of Father Parson, Daniel, Victor Hale, and Elias, each of whom had played a crucial role in preserving the village's safety. The children listened intently, their faces glowing with admiration and determination. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the snowy landscape, Lila felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The future of Frosthaven was in good hands, and the legacy of light would continue to shine brightly. Chapter 25: The Watchers. The village continued to grow and evolve, its people ever vigilant against the return of darkness. They maintained the traditions and rituals that had been passed down through generations, their unity a powerful shield against any threat. Years turned into decades, and the children who had once sat at Lila's feet grew into capable and wise leaders. They took up the mantle of guardianship, ensuring that Frosthaven remained a place of safety and hope. Among these new leaders was a young woman named Alara, named after the legendary Keeper of Secrets. She had shown a remarkable aptitude for learning and a deep commitment to her village. Under her guidance, Frosthaven's defenses were strengthened, and the bonds of community were reinforced. Alara often visited the lake, a place that had once been a symbol of fear but was now a testament to the village's resilience. She would sit by the water's edge, reflecting on the stories of the past and drawing inspiration for the future. One crisp autumn evening, as Alara sat by the lake, she noticed something unusual. The surface of the water began to ripple, and a faint, ethereal glow emerged from the depths. She watched in awe as a figure appeared, shimmering with light. It was the spirit of Father Parson, his presence a comforting and guiding force. "Alara," he spoke, his voice soft and reassuring. "You and your people have done well. Frosthaven is strong because of your unity and vigilance. But remember, the darkness can never be truly eradicated. It can always return, seeking new ways to breach your defenses. Stay vigilant and continue to pass on the knowledge and the rituals that have kept your village safe." Alara nodded, her heart swelling with pride and determination. "We will, Father Parson. We will honor your legacy and ensure that Frosthaven remains a beacon of light." Chapter 26: The Eternal Vigil. As the years passed, Alara's leadership proved instrumental in maintaining the strength and unity of Frosthaven. She instituted new traditions, blending the old rituals with modern practices, creating a resilient and adaptable community. The village continued to hold annual vigils at the lake, each year renewing their commitment to protect their home. The stories of their ancestors, the battles fought, and the darkness overcome were passed down through generations, a living history that bonded the people of Frosthaven together. Elias, now an elder statesman, looked upon the village with pride. His teachings had taken root, and the younger generation had embraced the responsibility of guardianship. He often spent his days in the village library, chronicling the events and ensuring that no detail was forgotten. One winter's night, as a fierce storm raged outside, the villagers gathered in the great hall, their spirits high despite the howling wind. Alara stood before them, her voice strong and clear. "We are the Watchers," she declared. "We stand united against the darkness, our light shining brightly. Frosthaven is more than a village. It is a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit." The villagers cheered, their voices rising in a powerful chorus. They knew that as long as they remained united, they could face any challenge, any threat, and emerge victorious. The story of Frosthaven became a legend, known far and wide as a tale of courage, unity, and triumph over darkness. Travelers and scholars came from distant lands to learn from the village's wisdom and to witness the strength of its people. Alara, Elias, and the Council of Elders ensured that the legacy of Frosthaven was preserved, its lessons shared with the world. The village itself became a beacon, a place where the light of hope and unity shone brightly, guiding others through the darkest of times. And so, the village of Frosthaven lived on, its people ever watchful, ever hopeful and forever united against the shadows. The legacy of light continued to shine, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the belief that no darkness could ever truly conquer the light. Chapter 27: The Return of the Wanderer. One spring morning, a stranger arrived in Frosthaven. He was a tall, sturdy man with weathered features and eyes that had seen much of the world. He introduced himself as Kale, a wanderer and scholar of the supernatural. "I've heard tales of Frosthaven's resilience," Kale said, his voice carrying a hint of admiration. "I've come seeking knowledge and perhaps to share what I have learned in my travels." Alara welcomed him with open arms, recognizing the importance of new perspectives and insights. Kale was given a place in the village, and he soon became a part of their community, sharing stories of his adventures and the dark forces he had encountered. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kale sat with Alara and Elias by the lake. He spoke of a new threat he had encountered, a force of darkness that seemed to be growing stronger with each passing day. "I believe this darkness is connected to what you have faced here," Kale said, his expression serious. "It feeds on fear and despair, and it is spreading." Alara listened intently, her mind racing. "Do you think it could reach Frosthaven?" Kale nodded. "It's possible. But with your knowledge and the strength of this community, we can prepare and defend against it." Chapter 1: The First Snow. The winter settled in early that year, blanketing the small town of Frostbrook in a thick layer of snow. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that bit at your nose and turned your breath into visible puffs. The townsfolk, accustomed to harsh winters, went about their business, shoveling driveways and salting walkways. But there was something different about this winter, an eerie stillness that seemed to hang in the air. At the edge of town stood an old, abandoned mansion known as the Marlowe House. Once the pride of Frostbrook, it had fallen into disrepair after a series of tragic events left it uninhabited. The locals told stories of strange noises and ghostly apparitions, but most dismissed these as mere legends, tales to scare the children. Chapter 2: The Gathering Storm. As the days grew shorter and the nights colder, the storm warnings became more frequent. A massive blizzard was predicted to hit Frostbrook, the likes of which hadn't been seen in decades. The townspeople prepared as best they could, stocking up on supplies and hunkering down in their homes. In the midst of these preparations, a group of teenagers, Jake, Emily, Sarah, and Matt, decided to explore the Marlowe house. They had heard the stories all their lives and were curious to see if there was any truth to them. Armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure, they made their way through the snow-covered streets to the mansion. Chapter 3: The Haunting. The mansion loomed over them, its windows dark and uninviting. The front door creaked loudly as they pushed it open, the sound echoing through the empty halls. Inside, the air was even colder than outside, and a thick layer of dust covered every surface. The house seemed to groan and settle around them as if it were alive. As they explored, strange things began to happen. Doors slammed shut on their own, whispers echoed through the halls, and shadows moved in the corners of their eyes. The further they ventured, the more intense the phenomena became. Emily, the most sensitive of the group, felt an overwhelming sense of dread and begged the others to leave. But Jake, determined to uncover the truth, insisted they press on. Chapter 4: The Revelation. In the attic, they discovered a dusty old journal belonging to Elizabeth Marlowe, the last resident of the house. Her entries spoke of a dark presence that had taken over the mansion, driving her family to madness and death. She wrote of strange rituals and an ancient curse tied to the land on which the house was built. The final entry was a desperate plea for help, a warning to anyone who might find her words. As they read, the temperature dropped even further, and a deep, guttural growl filled the air. The shadows coalesced into a figure, a twisted, nightmarish entity that lunged at them. They fled, barely making it out of the house with their lives. Chapter 5: The Blizzard. The blizzard hit with a fury, trapping everyone indoors. The teenagers, traumatized by their experience, tried to warn the townsfolk, but few believed them. That night, as the wind howled and the snow piled up, the power went out, plunging the town into darkness. In the pitch black, strange things began to happen. People reported hearing whispers, seeing figures in the snow, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. The entity from the Marlowe house seemed to have followed them back, spreading its malevolence through the town. Chapter 6: The Fight for Survival. As the blizzard raged on, the town descended into chaos. People went missing, strange markings appeared on buildings, and the sense of fear grew stronger. Jake, Emily, Sarah, and Matt, feeling responsible for unleashing the horror, decided to confront it. They returned to the Marlowe house, armed with the knowledge from Elizabeth's journal. The ritual needed to banish the entity was dangerous, requiring a sacrifice and the recitation of an ancient incantation. Desperate to save their town, they prepared for the battle of their lives. Chapter 7: The Final Confrontation. The house was even more menacing than before, the entity's presence palpable. The teenagers set up the ritual in the main hall, chanting the incantation as the shadows closed in around them. The air crackled with energy, and the ground shook as the entity fought back. In a moment of bravery, Emily stepped forward as the sacrifice, knowing it was the only way to save her friends and the town. Her selfless act weakened the entity, giving the others the strength to complete the ritual. With a final, anguished scream, the entity was banished and the house fell silent. Chapter 8: The Aftermath. The blizzard subsided as quickly as it had begun, leaving Frostbrook in an eerie calm. The townspeople emerged from their homes, shaken but alive. The Marlowe house, now devoid of its dark presence, crumbled to the ground, taking its secrets with it. Jake, Sarah, and Matt mourned the loss of Emily, but her sacrifice had not been in vain. The town was safe, and the story of their bravery became legend. Winter eventually gave way to spring, but the memory of that terrible night remained, a reminder of the horrors that lurked just beneath the surface. Years passed, and the events of that winter became a distant memory. Frostbrook rebuilt, the scars of the past healing over time. But some nights, when the wind howled and the snow fell thick, the townsfolk would whisper of the Marlowe house and the brave souls who had faced the darkness. And in the shadows, something stirred, waiting for the next winter, when the snow would fall and the darkness would return. Chapter 9: Shadows in the Snow. 10 years after the harrowing winter, Frostbrook had become a quiet town once more. The story of the Marlowe house had faded into folklore, a cautionary tale told to keep children from straying too far from home. Life had returned to normal, or so it seemed. One particularly cold December, strange occurrences began to disrupt the town's peace. At first, it was subtle: a missing pet, strange footprints in the snow, and whispers in the wind. But as the days passed, the incidents grew more frequent and more sinister. Windows shattered in the dead of night, objects moved on their own, and the townspeople started seeing shadows lurking just beyond their vision. Jake, now a young man, had never truly recovered from the events of his youth. Haunted by the memory of Emily's sacrifice, he had left Frostbrook for a time, seeking solace in the anonymity of the city. But something had called him back, an uneasy feeling that the past was not as buried as he had hoped. Chapter 10: The Return. Jake arrived in Frostbrook to find the town on edge. The festive spirit of the holiday season was dampened by an undercurrent of fear. Old friends welcomed him with open arms, grateful for his return. They shared their concerns and recounted the strange happenings that had begun to plague them once more. Determined to protect his hometown, Jake gathered Sarah and Matt, who had remained close despite the passage of time. They reminisced about the night that had changed their lives, their bond strengthened by shared trauma. Together, they decided to investigate the source of the new disturbances, fearing that the entity they had banished had found a way back. Chapter 11: The Warning. As they delved deeper into the mystery, they discovered an ancient text hidden in the ruins of the Marlowe house. The text, written in an old, forgotten language, spoke of a cycle, darkness that would return every decade, seeking to reclaim what it had lost. The entity, though weakened by their previous confrontation, had not been destroyed. It had merely been waiting for the right time to rise again. The townsfolk were skeptical of Jake and his friends' warnings, dismissing them as paranoid fantasies. But when a brutal snowstorm hit, eerily similar to the one from years before, the town had no choice but to believe. People disappeared in the night, and the shadows grew bolder, attacking anyone who dared to venture outside after dark. Chapter 12: The New Alliance. Realizing they couldn't fight this battle alone, Jake, Sarah, and Matt sought help from a reclusive old woman named Agnes, known for her knowledge of the occult. Agnes revealed that she was a descendant of Elizabeth Marlowe and had been guarding her ancestors' secrets for years. She possessed the knowledge and tools needed to combat the entity, but warned that this time, the battle would be even more dangerous. With Agnes's guidance, they gathered the necessary ingredients for a powerful ritual. The townspeople, now fully aware of the threat, came together to support the effort. Old rivalries were set aside, and a sense of unity emerged as they prepared to face the looming darkness. Chapter 13: The Final Stand. On the night of the winter solstice, The group assembled at the site of the Marlowe house ruins. The air was thick with tension, and the howling wind seemed to carry whispers of the past. Agnes led the ritual, chanting in the ancient language while Jake, Sarah, and Matt stood guard, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of the entity. As the ritual reached its climax, the ground trembled and a cold, malevolent presence filled the air. The entity, now more monstrous than ever, emerged from the darkness, its form shifting and writhing. The townspeople watched in horror as it advanced, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Drawing on their combined strength and the power of the ritual, the group fought back. Jake confronted the entity head-on, his courage unwavering despite the fear that gripped his heart. With a final, desperate incantation, they managed to bind the entity, trapping it in a circle of light. Chapter 14: The Aftermath. The dawn broke over Frostbrook, the first rays of sunlight dispelling the lingering shadows. The entity was gone, its presence banished once more. The town, though scarred by the ordeal, began to heal. The bond forged in the crucible of darkness brought the townspeople closer together, their resilience a testament to their strength. Jake, Sarah, Matt, and Agnes stood at the edge of the ruins, the weight of their victory settling in. They knew the entity was not destroyed, but they had bought the town another decade of peace. Agnes entrusted them with the ancient text, ensuring that the knowledge would not be lost to time. Life in Frostbrook returned to normal, the story of the entity becoming a part of the town's lore. Jake, Sarah, and Matt resumed their lives, always vigilant, always ready. They knew that the darkness would return one day, but they were prepared to face it together. As the years passed, the story of the brave souls who had faced the darkness became a legend, a tale told around winter fires to ward off the cold. And in the shadows, a watchful eye remained, ever vigilant, ever ready to protect Frostbrook from the darkness that lurked just beyond the light. Chapter 15: New Beginnings. Winter came and went, each year bringing its own challenges, but none quite like the terror of the past. Jake, Sarah, and Matt remained close, their bond unbreakable. They took on roles within the community, becoming pillars of strength and wisdom. Jake found solace in teaching, sharing stories and lessons from his experiences. Sarah pursued a career in medicine, dedicating herself to healing both physical and emotional wounds. Matt, with his technical skills, became an engineer, helping to modernize Frostbrook and protect it from future threats. Agnes, the keeper of ancient knowledge, continued to guide them. Her presence was a comforting reminder that they were not alone in their vigilance. She trained a new generation in the old ways, ensuring the town would always have protectors. Chapter 16: Whispers of Darkness. As the 10th anniversary of their battle approached, subtle signs of the entity's return began to manifest. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over Frostbrook. Jake, Sarah, and Matt, now older and wiser, sensed the impending threat. They gathered the old allies and sought out new ones, preparing for what they knew was inevitable. Agnes, though frail with age, was more determined than ever to see the town safe. She revealed an ancient prophecy hidden in the text, hinting at a way to permanently destroy the entity. The prophecy spoke of a celestial event, a rare alignment of stars that would grant them the power to banish the darkness forever. The alignment was due to occur on the night of the winter solstice, giving them a narrow window of opportunity. Chapter 17. The Celestial Event. The night of the solstice arrived, and Frostbrook held its breath. The townspeople, now well aware of the stakes, came together once more. They fortified their homes and gathered in the town square, where a massive bonfire blazed, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. Jake, Sarah, Matt, and Agnes stood at the center of the preparations. They had spent months studying the prophecy, deciphering its cryptic messages, and gathering the necessary materials. The ritual required precise timing and absolute focus, with each of them playing a crucial role. As the stars began to align, the air crackled with energy. The ground trembled, and a deep, resonant hum filled the air. The entity, sensing the threat, emerged from the shadows, more furious and powerful than ever. It lashed out, attempting to disrupt the ritual, but the townspeople formed a protective barrier, their combined willpower holding it at bay.